I want to open this video with some quick and clear disclosures before we get started. Yes, this is a sponsored preview of an upcoming game slated for 2026. I get these sorts of offers fairly frequently for new and upcoming games, and up to now I've turned these down or ignored them because the terms are funky or because the publisher is really just paying for a creator to blindly endorse their recent release and they don't let you go past their pre-described talking points. That's not really my style, obviously. I value the trust that you have put in my voice and my dumb opinions. As such, the folks working on and publishing this game do not get a say in what I say in this video. They are paying for airspace, a couple basic plugs, and for me to share any and all honest opinions that I have about the Steam demo for their game, Lifted. This could have ended up very poorly for them. They could have had to have paid me to dunk all over their game and then link you to the Steam demo, but thankfully, the demo for Lifted is cute, and I did enjoy it. So this is Lifted, a simple but charming time-traveling 2D puzzle platformer developed by indie studio AdventureWorks. It's slated to release around the start of 2026 on Steam, PS5, and Nintendo Switch, and the footage that you're seeing is my playthrough of the demo that is currently available on Steam. There's a link below if you want to check that demo out. To peel back the curtain further, part of why I agreed to this preview here is because they frankly had a good pitch. This game and AdventureWorks itself are led by a guy named Jeff Ashbrook, who I looked into because, well, that's what I do here. Ashbrook studied game design before starting a very different career working on and helping design theme park rides for Disney's parks. One of the miscellaneous notes they had given before I started researching was that he was one of the designers on the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride. If you know what that is, let me know if that's cool or not. Lifted is self-published, so I'm guessing unless they have outside funding somewhere, that being an Imagineer pays pretty well considering I don't do these for cheap. So the entirety of Lifted is meant to be a love letter to the sorts of playful movies and games that Ashbrook loved growing up, and that pitch of making the game I always wanted to play will usually grab my attention for at least 1 second. For example, it's clear that the team loves Back to the Future, and they've said as much. And to be fair, if you don't love those movies, I think you're probably a bad person. The demo opens weirdly, honestly. It just opens with our protagonist, Ari Bucktu, screaming. I'm not sure if this is how the game itself will open, but they give you the context both in this opening cutscene and sprinkled throughout all of the mid-gameplay dialogue. Ari is working with his teacher, Professor Lionel Raventhorpe, on a time-traveling elevator, and it sends them all the way back to early 1800s Egypt before it breaks down. This demo contains 2 levels in this Egypt chapter, first just outside some ruins and then exploring the inside of those ruins, as Ari's dragged along on the professor's apparent quest to find an ancient tiara, before the demo ends with everybody's favorite, a minecart section. Aside from the minecart, I believe that these constitute 2 distinct levels of the 13 or so that are advertised in the full game, which will at the very least take you through a classic pirate area as you apparently hunt down Blackbeard himself. As far as the gameplay goes, it's unabashedly simple and designed so that younger players can enjoy it, while I think trying to have some meat on the bone for adults like you or me as well. Ari's got a jump and a double jump, and over the course of the game, I'm assuming the professor will give you a number of different gadgets. In the demo at least, you only get his latest and greatest invention.
I call it a grappling hook.
You didn't invent that.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's why Batman has one of those.
Okay, I gotta say, that one got me. The dialogue is fully voiced throughout the entire demo, and therefore I assume the game. It's maybe a bit too talky and zingy early on when they're trying to really hook you into things, but it feels like it slows down in that second level to a much more manageable pace with some appropriate quiet moments. Ari is pretty McFly-coded in his delivery, a bit aloof to it all, lots of mumbled one-liners to himself. When they get a good line, it hits pretty well, and there seem to be some alternate lines so that you're not just hearing the same exact one-liners every time you go to replay a stage, it's a bit much up front. The professor, meanwhile, covers the broad slate of goofy mad scientist tropes, but ends up coming off pretty charming and funny, which, for a game that's explicitly not trying to reinvent the wheel, but instead evoke a feeling of nostalgia, I think works towards that goal pretty well. Like I said, these guys will chat with each other and several other characters throughout the levels, and in proper cutscenes that are short and sprinkled evenly throughout. These dedicated cutscenes give you more of a chance to take in Lifted's cartoony, almost clay-molded stop-motion art style. The floating, disconnected hands might evoke something like Rayman at first leap. Apparently that's actually a coincidence, since whoever's manning their YouTube comments noted that they didn't play Rayman as a kid at all. Instead though, the vibe that I got, tell me if I'm crazy here, was Overcooked or even My Sims. It's a cute, cozy, expressive aesthetic. The painted on eyes and mouths are constantly emoting and moving as the characters speak in the cutscenes. It's all simple, but another bit of production value that I didn't expect from a first-time project, given how often they throw to these in-engine cutscenes. I can't tell you how many indie scrimblos I've played that don't even bother animating faces during zoomed-in dialogue, since they only do it maybe twice in the game. Meanwhile here, every couple minutes there's a breakaway to show you the duo reaching their next objective and looking out at the vista, or chatting for a moment, or crashing a helipack. It's just kinda interesting to see this blend of fully voiced cinematics and gameplay in such a small-scale game, which is maybe the most charming thing about Lifted overall. It's not the first indie title to go for this Uncharted, or more accurately Indiana Jones blend, but right at this moment, I struggle to think of another example that was made by only a dozen people like this one, that actually succeeds at portraying these vistas in that cinematic style, at making fully voiced characters emotive, even if at points in this early slice, the contents of their dialogue might feel a bit rote. Before I go back to explain the gameplay, I want to highlight a couple other things that impressed me more than I expected as far as attention to detail goes. The demo's got a suite of accessibility settings already baked in, which is a layer of polish that I just didn't really expect. This includes 2 difficulty settings, one for standard platformer players and a more casual mode. Though once you dig into the options, it actually lets you manually flip switches to decide which parts of the easy mode you want on or off. I couldn't figure out what the easier platforming option does though. It doesn't seem to make your jumps higher, and it doesn't do away with the game's weird fondness for one-block-wide platforms, but having stuff like easier puzzle timing as a separate slider is a nice touch for anybody who might struggle with that sort of timing. That said, in the demo, I don't think there's really anything timing specific that you would need to worry about. Also, respect for any game or demo that lets you turn motion blur off. From what I saw, this wasn't actually in the demo at first, but got added after a couple people requested it on the Steam forums, another nice sign that people behind the scenes are actually listening to feedback. And back on the front of the production values themselves, although there are sliders for voiceover, sound effects, and music, somehow that's something I do have to highlight because some AAA games still don't do this. Although those sliders exist, the mixing was actually really solid already. They play a bit with stereo and surround sound at points as well, which I usually don't notice since most games nowadays will still play, for example, voiceover from a character off to your right out of both speakers, just one slightly louder than the other. Here in Lifted, they would sometimes throw the professor's voice out in the distance with a bit of a reverb effect to sell you that he's yelling from a decent ways away and that there might be an echo in the canyon that you're in. The background music is solid as well, better than I would have expected. Now, don't expect much beyond your standard adventure game or movie fare, but it shoots for that and it does it really well. Now back to Lifted's gameplay, which is where I think all of the polish in the demo is best highlighted, because all of what I've said is carrying this adventure, at least as far as this 25 or so minutes of demo will take us. Based on preview footage, it looks like the game does ramp up the puzzles later, but this adventure, as far as what I can personally say that I've played, is mostly an ordinary, cartoony, easy 2D platformer. It's got charming, impressive production values for what it is, but I would have really liked to have seen some of what this game builds to later. There's a reason some of the strongest game demos throw you into a mid-game level that was designed as the pitch for the game, or that there's some sort of really good, engaging story cliffhanger that makes you want to see what's next. This game, by design, plays it safe and simple, and I'm not sure whether that's the best foot to have shown for the entirety of this demo. The first level here consists pretty exclusively of some easy jumps, some rope climbing and swinging, and near the end you get that grappling hook for, well, more rope climbing and swinging. It all feels good enough, and the simplicity does let you enjoy the camera tracking as you would move through the foreground, highlighting something in the backdrop. Sometimes, since you only control Ari, it might be the professor doing his own thing in a different background layer. Other times, it's the game panning out to give you a bespoke shot of scenery or set up the cutscene that's about to play. And credit to them, another small thing that they got right here that always irks me when it's not addressed properly. If the game's changing your perspective or moving you onto a different 2D pathway, say if you're moving right and suddenly the game moves you onto a layer where you're now going left, it doesn't jerk you back in the wrong direction just because you're still holding right on the D-pad. Everybody's had one of those moments in any game with a locked camera, like the classic Resident Evils or any PS1 RPG, where you enter a room, the camera perspective is wildly different in that new room, and you accidentally now leave the room you just entered before you even have a moment to move your thumb. Lifted doesn't have that problem. When given the relative inexperience of the team here, I would have fully expected it to. They genuinely get the small stuff right, which is what took this from a game that I would have otherwise passed over to a game that I do hope can keep progressing its gameplay and become something truly great. It's the second level inside the tomb, and the game's neat little spin on every cinematic adventure game's standard climbing mechanics that have me thinking that it's got a decent shot at that. You know how this climbing works. You press the D-pad or move the stick in the direction of the handhold, sometimes you press A to jump as well, but a neat little thing that makes this a bit more flowy or kinetic, if you tap the direction while that little sparkle appears on the next handhold in front of you, you'll move faster and faster through these sections that we've all learned to turn our brains off for. By the tomb level, they integrate some weighted block pushing puzzles into the mix as well, including some fun ideas that I don't recall seeing that often before, like forcing you to push a block with handholds on it into position to climb a specific pathway. And that stuff in turn gets you thinking about pulling it in a different direction to find alternative pathways where you might find one of the game's several sets of ancient artifact collectibles. Complete a set and you get a new costume that seems to be based on that level or motif, which also appears in the game's cutscenes since they're all in-engine, at least as far as the demo goes. This rhythmic climbing gimmick is what had me feeling like those little one-block-wide platforms might also be their own rhythmic jumping challenges, that you're supposed to hit a flow state there and trust the mechanics as you just tap A and keep moving forward. But with how often this game will bounce from a platforming section to a puzzle, and how short the sections are at least in this demo, I don't quite know if this is actually intentional. It may just be a way to improve and speed up that standard climbing stuff while still having that climbing stuff there so that they can show you the pretty views and play around with the 2D perspective a bit. There are also some momentum-based breakable walls where if you're in that flow state and swinging on your rope fast enough, you'll break through in one go, but if you're not just at the right speed, you'll need to hit the wall twice to crash through. It feels like an idea that might be trying to go somewhere later, but I can't say based on the demo whether or not it succeeds at that later on in the game. The last bit I'll hit on is the conclusion of the demo, the minecart section. It very much aims for that cinematic roller coaster ride sort of spin on the classic minecart sections that you've certainly played somewhere before, while also being the most punishing part of the demo. Now, you don't have a traditional health bar or HP here, there aren't even enemies in this game since it's focusing more on the fun adventure and tomb raiding aspect. But for this minecart section, you're expected to react quickly to jump over or duck under falling debris, while a whole lot of other crashing and falling is happening in the background layer at the same time. It also feels like the cart's set speed varies a bit as you're twisting and turning, but not in the way you might expect. It's always just a smidge slower than I think I want, even as the demo ends with the big roller coaster drop into the launch section that you usually get at the end of one of these minecart things. I'm not getting a huge rush out of it, and that also threw me off when it came to dodging the debris before that ending. It's not hard, mind you, because you do have 3 hits in this section, and all of the game's checkpoints are insanely forgiving. At most, you might go back 10 seconds. It's just not that kind of game that's meant to be really all that challenging. But it felt like this might have needed an extra layer of polish, like you might be slowing down just a smidge as you jump or duck, which makes you likely to get hit at the very tail end of your jump. And in general, this was a bit of a tonal shift that had me wondering what the rest of the game does look like. That's kind of the goal of a demo if you really think about it in a vacuum, getting you to think about what the full game will be like, but I definitely wanted to be more directly wowed by some unique gameplay idea, set piece, a different gadget later on, or a novel puzzle sequence. There are so many indie titles dropping every month, and this one genuinely feels like it'll be one of the more polished ones in whatever month it does drop early next year, but without feeling that wham, that one moment that really leaves you wanting more of the core gameplay or story. In a demo like this, it might be a missed opportunity to leave players satisfied, intrigued, but without the feeling of, I have to play this right away. I feel like, and I'm hopeful that, my hunch is right and that the later areas like the Pirate's Cove or the Ice Cave are where Lifted really locks in and delivers on the promise that its great production values deserve. The free demo for Lifted is available on Steam right now if you're interested in trying out the first half hour or so of the game. I've got a fancy schmancy link below that'll take you right to it and let them know that I sent them your way. If the demo clicks with you, or if you just want to keep tabs on it as it nears release early next year, wishlisting it on Steam can help push it onto other folks' radars as well. That's a free and easy way to help get smaller developers and games out there. Personally, I try to wishlist anything I'm even half interested in just to support the cause. And again, Lifted is currently aiming to drop on Steam, PS5, and Switch in the first few months of 2026. Putting aside that this is a promotional preview, I am excited to see how the final game shakes out. Your regularly scheduled The Golden Bolt programming will resume later in the week with a very fun video that I've been asked to do for far too long because some of you really want to see me suffer. So look forward to that. Until then, as always, stay golden.